think we should start with the objective of our call and then introduce ourselves. The purpose of this call is really to give out some important information about adoptees that are searching for their Chinese parents, their birth parents. Just a quick introduction of myself. I am a mom of a Chinese adoptee. She's now 20 years old. And welcome Kathy, who's also an adoptive mom and an ICSA volunteer. So thanks for joining us, Kathy.
Hi, Sue. Yes, I have two daughters adopted from China, and my daughters are now 21, and tomorrow my oldest will be 23.
ICSA is a volunteer run organization that provides information and resources and encourages individuals to use those resources and methods and use whatever you're comfortable with, right? We're just putting information out there. Do you think that's an accurate statement, Kathy?
I do. We have collaborated, all of our volunteers have collaborated, particularly on our website, to provide all the information that is out there. There are other websites available. Some are very good, but usually they don't include all the information. It's information about their particular organization. Ours is about all the information that is out there, and we keep it up to date. We are always adding and adjusting our website.
First, I'd like to say thank you for that because I really am so appreciative of all of the knowledge that's out there and really wasn't aware of it for a long time. So that's what we want to do is let people know what's out there. And one of the things that about this searching, it's really a very emotional journey. And I think it's emotional for both an adoptee and the parents of an adoptee. So, this is one of the reasons why my adult daughter, she was about 18 at the time, asked me to do the searching. But I do see a lot of adoptees taking the lead on the searching these days, right? There's a lot of very active volunteers out there that are adoptees. What do you think?
Yeah, adoptees are
Yeah.
getting to an age where, I mean, when you look at the statistics, the most adoptions from China happened in 2004 and 2005. And so those adoptees are getting to young adulthood, and a lot of them are either starting their own search or taking over the searches that their parents have been doing. And so it's a very exciting time for them.
Is, it is,
Um,
and but it's about setting expectations too, right? What are some key points there about setting your expectations? We know that not every adoptee is going to find their birth parents. So what advice do you have?
My advice is to temper your expectations, to remember that we're still early in the years of reunions happening. They are happening more than anybody ever expected them to, but there's still a lot of searches that come up without finding birth parents. And so I think it's important to have some support systems, particularly. People that can be your sounding board and your cheerleader when you're starting on a search. And then the other thing is to think about it as a journey. What are the things that you can learn about yourself, not just finding your birth parents? That is part of it. But building relationships with other adoptees or people who live in China and learning more about your birth culture, but just really your sense of identity.
Along those lines, after I've set my expectations and my daughter has set her expectations, or even a son has set their expectations, um, you start this search, and what is it that you need for documentation? I had this big folder of documents about my daughter from the Yangzhou orphanage, and I also ordered a search report from Research China. Other than that, I didn't know where I should start. So, what's your advice?
My advice is to gather all the adoption documents, the Red Book, which is your adoption certificate from China, your abandonment certificate. Not everyone will have that, but most will. Birth certificate, all the stuff that's found in the social welfare's file on a child, like growth reports, anything regarding the child's time in China. Start by having them retranslated, because we have found that sometimes things were left off. They didn't feel like it was important, or didn't want to translate it. And just to look at everything, all the information you have on that time in China. And then, yes, I feel that a birth parent search analysis can be helpful. I think you have to weigh it as far as what you find out, but I do think it's important to get.
And I was also surprised because I did have my daughter's finding ad. So I was surprised to hear that some adoptive parents and adoptees did not have that in their possession. And I do know that you also point to some resources out there where you can possibly obtain that, and it might have some useful information as to the
Yeah,
location.
Yeah, Research China actually does find finding ads for people that were not provided those at the time of adoption. And for those that don't know, a finding ad is just an advertisement in the newspaper saying we're looking for this child's birth family, and it usually gives all the pertinent information. But in the early years, finding ads were not even ran, and sometimes they can't be found. My oldest daughter did not have one, and Research China was unable to find one for her. But she was the first international adoptee from her orphanage, and so that could have had bearing on whether they did a finding ad or not. But by law, they were supposed to by the time her adoption occurred, which was in 2002.
Okay, so good information on documents. Gather the adoption certificate, the red book, and anything you got when you were doing the adoption in China. Hopefully, a finding ad, any of those growth reports, and anything that you know about the Social Welfare Institute. So, thanks for that. And documents are great, right? But now we've got this next topic that is really a huge topic, right? This is about the DNA.
Yeah,
And
DNA, it's the easiest searching you will do.
and what's really interesting, so I was, I'm novice to this whole um, search community. I really only started um, a couple of years ago, and the only DNA I really was aware of was the 23andMe or Ancestry. So I had gotten, per my daughter's request, a 23andMe kit, and found some very distant cousins in there, right? Third cousins, and didn't know where to go from there. Of course, I diligently reached out to all of them anyway, but nobody really had any information. And honestly, I didn't even really know about GEDmatch, which we'll talk about in a second. But I've heard of Jed Match on the crime shows, right? And this is how you can find uh, somebody in America that had a relative that was, committing a crime. I really didn't even understand it was this free resource out there. So about a year after the 23andMe upload, and again, I didn't upload it anywhere to GEDmatch, but I obviously wasn't getting very far. And it wasn't until about a year after that initial DNA test that I just stumbled across it watching TV one night, the One Child Nation documentary. And I did see, Brian in there talking about these DNA matches, and actually reached out to him because I had no idea where to go. And he pointed me in the direction of a lot of these resources. It would have been really useful if I had known about some of these resources that your organization posts out there for everyone to know about. So we're really trying to educate people about this, right?
Yeah, there's so many places to upload, but definitely all adoptees should start with 23andMe. There's more birth parent DNA in that database, and more adoptees in that database, and more Chinese overall in that database. So that is definitely the place to start. And then to upload to all the free sites, but definitely start with GEDmatch. Again, more birth parent DNA. There's over 1,200, maybe even more than that, maybe about 1,400 birth parents in GEDmatch. And so those are the two places to start. But then we have a whole list of places you can upload for free, some for smaller amounts than buying a new kit. And then after that, then go back and do as many paid kits as you can that you have to if they don't have a free upload service. Ancestry is a good place to start with that second round of paid testing. A lot of siblings have been found there, and because some people did ancestry way back when and didn't realize that everyone else was in 23andMe, so there are siblings being matched on ancestry. After that, in this is all on our website, but there's different types of DNA testing, and the other type is a paternity type test, but it is the most widely used in China. And the Nanchang Project has a way to send a DNA sample to China to be put into the National Reunion Database, and that's just another avenue.
Yeah, I think that it's great that you're including all of the avenues there. And now that I have been more involved in the community, I see that not everyone is comfortable doing all of these things. And of course, my daughter was an adult, and every step of the way, though she asked me to do the search because she didn't have time or the emotional energy. Um, I did make sure that, I talked to her about these things before I did them. So I wasn't randomly putting her blood DNA somewhere or putting her DNA into another Chinese database. But, ultimately, that is how the connection with her parents was made. The upload, the 23andMe did not result in any close relatives. The upload to GEDmatch did not. But the upload to 23 Mofang actually found a first cousin. Um, and what's interesting, you say that it's more the blood DNA used in China, right? And
Right.
after having discussed this with her family, I find that to be true for the older family. When they found out that the younger cousin, who was 26, matched with Mofang, they were skeptical because they did not understand that type of DNA. It did take a little work and obviously a blood match later on. But what's interesting is the younger generation is often who's putting it into the Mofang database, which is similar to our 23andMe. Her cousin was getting married, and her husband said, "Hey, let's do this thing and put our DNA in there." And so again, I think that the chances of matching to even a sibling or a cousin in those databases as the younger generation starts to use them, I think there's a lot more possibilities there. Again, it has to be your choice. That's why the resources are there, and no one is going to tell you what to use, but just to let you know your options.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important, Sue, to think about, you had mentioned when you first did 23andMe and you had some third cousin matches. Well, first of all, third cousin for some people actually could be a good resource. But when you're messaging people on these services, there's two things to consider. First of all, remember that a lot of people will just put their DNA in there, they'll look at the results, and then they'll never go back to that app again. And if they're not set up to get emails or notifications, they will never see those messages. And then the other thing to remember when you're messaging people on the DNA apps is some people are freaked out by the word adopted or adoption. And so I don't ever start out a message to a DNA relative using the word adopted or adoption or birth parents. I always just ask, so, I ask them, well, how do you think we're related? And just a real open-ended question. And or what can you tell me about your family, where you're from? And so that helps with getting responses.
I think that's great advice and probably where I went wrong. So,
Well,
of
because
all of those messages that my daughter and I sent to the third cousins in 23andMe, we probably started that conversation the wrong way. And one was actually in the area that my daughter was born, and he immediately blocked us. So I agree with you that sometimes those messages have to be phrased a certain way. And I think that that brings us to the next topic about networking, because that networking inside of the adoptees country, but in China, is very important. So when my when my daughter matched in Mofang to her cousin, um, there was a volunteer, actually Yang Jin, so I think he's comfortable with me using his name, and I believe you originally put me in touch with him, but he did the reaching out and
yes.
approached it carefully. I will say eventually multiple people had to reach out to the cousin, and the cousin thought that she was being scammed and kept blocking people because she did not know about this lost cousin that she had. And it only came out after multiple people connected with her, and then she asked her parents. So I think the networking in and out of country is super, super important. And it also allows you to share your search videos and posters. And I've shared them with almost random strangers that I've connected with on LinkedIn and in other places to get those videos and those posters out there for young Joe adoptees. So, what's your advice on that networking piece?
Yeah, so my advice is in the beginning to definitely focus on networking with people in the US or wherever you live in the Western, I should say the Western Hemisphere, maybe. Join birth parent search groups, connect with people from your orphanage or from the same time frame that you were adopted or born. You can compare information that you have and photos and details, and bounce things off of each other as far as what's working or what's not working, and what they've tried. But there's a whole list of Facebook groups on our website that will help you connect with people here or in the Western world. As you move into your search, it is important to start connecting with people in China. Those volunteers or even just random citizens can be some of your best resources and allies. They know the culture and they know how to communicate, and um, they can build trust that we can't. That's the most important thing I feel like when you're trying to connect with birth parents, is that you have to have people that can instill that sense of trust with them. And like Yang Jin is a wonderful example. He knows the culture and he can say, hey, you might want to start out by doing it this way and talking to this person this way, or by even just letting him talk directly with them. One Chinese citizen to another Chinese citizen is much easier, I believe.
So I think the more you network, the better. And also again back to that journey piece, it it is obviously each of us as a parent or an adoptee, ultimately our goal is to find our own child's birth parents, right? But in that journey, I looked at it and my daughter looked at it like we were, even if we didn't find her family, we were helping to raise awareness in China that these kids in other countries, Canada, America, Europe, are looking to find their parents. And I did find that in our own personal experience, there was a lot of shame and embarrassment there, to the point of her mother almost not wanting to come forward because she felt so badly about what had happened. It's good to know and understand that culture to try to navigate that situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think your point about, helping others can really help this journey be fruitful no matter what the end result is for you. There's so much pain and trauma on both sides of the adoption world, and I say that adoptee and birth parents, the pain and the trauma for those that are in those worlds. We have to see this journey as a way not only to help when we're adoptive parents to help our child that's an adoptee that has been through this trauma, but
Mhm.
all adoptees, and then but then birth parents, to
Mhm.
really be able to help them, not only find their children, but then also to help them work through their trauma and their grief over having lost their child.
Right, and to hopefully get beyond those feelings enough, if they see enough of us, putting information out there and videos out there, that they will realize that there is not, there's no hard feelings in all of this, and we certainly understood the situation at the time. So the more awareness, the more potential Chinese families that will come forward.
Right, because our culture around us that surrounds adoption, in the Western world is so much different than the culture that surrounds adoption in the Chinese world. And in China, it's very shameful for an adoptee to search for birth parents. And so they usually wait until their adoptive parents have passed on. I've even heard birth parents say that it's wrong for an adoptee to search until their adoptive parents are dead. But we know in the Western world that it's normalized, and that most adoptive parents don't feel hurt by it, and most adoptive parents see the benefit of it. But in China, they do not. Okay.
There are many groups out there that will help you create posters, right? And videos, and you're
Right.
mentioning a few here. Go ahead.
So, of course, the ICSA website has information about our province search posters. We have been doing these posters since 2018, and we circulate them very widely on Chinese social media. To go along with that, recently we launched a mini app program for WeChat that's a database of all of our poster participants, and it's real easily searchable by birth parents. So we're pretty excited about that. And we
That's
update
great.
those posters 2 to 3 times a year, and we add new people to the database as needed. And then the Nanchang Project, even though it's currently paused, they have a really great program called Origin Searches, where they open it to adoptees from anywhere in China, and they offer regional and small group searches at an affordable cost. And then all birth parents that come forward on those searches are DNA tested by the Nanchang Project, and they cover all the costs for that. And then
That's
DNA
great.
Connect has what they call their wide net searches. So they'll search in a geographic area, and it's really not for a specific adoptee, but they gather adoptees from that geographic area, and they just try to get as many birth parents as they can to come forward from that geographic area. And then they DNA test. Again, they cover all the cost of the DNA testing for the birth parents that come forward.
I know each one does it a little bit differently, and people can make their choice, but I think they're all really great resources.
They can make choices or they can participate in all of them.
And there is an option, right, to hire a searcher. I don't know if I did not go that route, and I know a lot of people find that a little bit expensive, but how do you go about hiring a searcher?
Well, I think that hiring a searcher usually comes later in a search rather than earlier. But if you look at your information early on when you're looking at your information and you have some specific reliable information, I've even known people that have had the names of their birth parents in their paperwork. If you have information like that, you definitely need to look into hiring a searcher, someone who can go to that area and research and maybe find people like that. Our website has a list of searchers. I think that they're all good in their own right, but I would encourage you to interview a few of them. Ask about their fee structure, their successes, how they search. Maybe they specialize in a geographical area. Most importantly, I think philosophically, I think it's important to know who they're going to DNA test it. So if a birth family comes forward and they don't think that it will be a match for you, but it could be a match for another adoptee, would they still DNA test them? And what kind of DNA tests do they recommend? Do they just recommend to DNA test within China in the National Reunion Database? Or are they open to doing an autosomal kit that could be uploaded to GEDmatch? And then ask people that you know in the groups that you've joined, the Facebook groups that you've joined, or maybe another adoptee you know has hired a searcher, what their experience was like. I can say that I did hire a searcher pretty early on. And so when I hired her, it was so long ago. I did not really even say I wanted to find birth parents. I just wanted to gather information for my children about their early years in China. And so that's a possibility too. You know, if you have a young child and you don't know that they're open to searching for their birth parents, you could just want to gather information about who their foster family was, or, you
Mhm.
know, maybe if they were found by a particular person, you know, be able to have contact with that person that found them. That lays groundwork for later on if they do decide to search. They've got names, addresses, maybe WeChat, but even just connecting with those people can give them a sense of their identity as well.
So in a best case scenario, we're gonna wrap up in just 2 minutes here. So in a best case scenario, an adoptee would be reunited with their Chinese family, and having experienced this, that it can be stressful for everyone involved. It's a good stress, but it's stressful. And my daughter's ending was wonderful. We had a big family reunion this past February in Yangzhou, her hometown, for Chinese New Year, and we even had Yang Jin, the volunteer I mentioned, helping me. He also participated in that reunion. There he is on the left. Um, but what happens if you really need to just take a pause, right? You either haven't found the birth family or you're just getting a little bit stressed out. Do you also have resources for that?
Yes. So if you find your birth family, I think it's important to know there are groups out there of people that are in contact with birth family, both for adoptive parents and adoptees. And they're separate groups, which is nice because you need that private space to discuss your feelings and emotions. And these people have gone before you, they've walked that path, they can give you advice. That's good support for those that have found birth family. If you find yourself in a situation where you've kind of exhausted everything you can do, or you just can't take it anymore because it is a very stressful time, I think it's important to make sure that you let the people that have been helping you along the way know, hey, I got to take a break. And so when I take a break, what does that look like? You know, maybe I'm not as active on WeChat. And so that's okay. Know that if you don't open WeChat, you probably are going to get locked out. Make sure the volunteers know how they can get in touch with you, whether it be by email, Facebook Messenger, um, or even just snail mail.
Because I have had birth families contact me up to 10 years after a formal search has been conducted. And sometimes it's hard to find a adoptee when they've paused their search. So please make it easy for the volunteers that are working hard for you. And so I'd just like to remind everyone they can find all of this information on our website. It's icsachina.org. All of our volunteer information is on there with WeChat and emails, and we'd be happy to help you. Thanks, Sue. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Kathy, and thanks to all the volunteers that are helping the adoption community.